Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm John King. Thanks for sharing your day with us. And a newsy Friday it is. President Trump paid a triumphant visit just a short time ago to a big conservative meeting here just outside of Washington, looking to rally support for his agenda and looking to stifle any lingering distrust on the right.
We need to define what this great, unprecedented movement is and what it actually represents. The core conviction of our movement is that we are a nation that put and will put its own citizens first.
Plus, rare public insights from the man driving the new nationalist tilt at the Trump White House.
They're corporatist, globalist media that are adamantly opposed to an economic nationalist agenda like Donald Trump has. If you think they're going to give you your country back without a fight, you are sadly mistaken. Every day it is going to be a fight.
And the Iraq War helped define both the George W. Bush and Barack Obama presidencies. Is President Trump now on the verge of approving a new long-term U.S. troop presence?
We have, as has NATO, begun a dialogue about a long-term commitment to grow the capacity, maintain the capacity of Iraqi security forces.
With us today to share their reporting and their insights, Margaret Talev of Bloomberg, CNN's Manu Raju, Molly Hemingway of The Federalist, and Jackie Kucinich of the Daily Beast. It is another remarkably busy news day. President Trump planning new executive actions this hour. Vice President Mike Pence addressing the nation's governors at a big luncheon in Washington. We'll take you to both of those events as they happen. Plus, an unusual move that could be seen as White House meddling in the FBI's investigation of Russia's role in last year's campaign. We'll bring you new developments on that story as well. But let's begin around the table with what we just saw at CPAC, a 50-minute speech from a president of the United States, a Republican President Donald J. Trump, who, if we go back not that long ago, was viewed with hostility by the Republican Party and the conservative movement. He now leads them both. And he walked into that room today looking not only to sell his agenda, not only to get support for his agenda, but it was remarkable. We could go through the greatest hits if we want. There were a lot of greatest hits from the campaign. But if you listen to the entire speech, this is a new president telling the party and the movement, you're going to move my way on issues like trade. Go ahead.
Well, no, the thing that struck me, I think Matt Lewis said this the last hour, it wasn't really a conservative speech. He was talking about spending money on a lot of different things. And that is something, that is a shift that we've seen in this new Trump era, where there is, I don't know if Congress is going to go along with this. That's going to be his biggest obstacle, because there are fiscal conservatives there that are going to pump the brakes. But a lot of the things he's talking about, if he's not going to address entitlements, if he's going to increase the size of the military, if he's going to spend money on infrastructure, all of these things cost money.
It was a campaign speech in a lot of ways, and it laid out all the things that he talked about he would do during the campaign. So the size of his ambitions are pretty remarkable still in a town where it's incredibly difficult to get even marginal things done. I mean, he's talking about everything from obliterating ISIS to making sure that the wall will be built soon with on the border with Mexico.
Also
of course,
expensive.
Also very expensive, and a lot of hurdles to get that done. A major reform of the tax code, repeal and replace Obamacare, things that, of course, that crowd loved, but things that are going to be very difficult to accomplish. The question is that if he does not accomplish those things, what will those voters say to him next year or the year after?
Well, but before we get to that part, next year or the year after, though, if anybody at home is waiting to see this president make broad outreach to the people who didn't vote for him in the election, hit the pause button. If we've learned anything early on, and that room today was proof, his focus right now is on keeping his promises from the campaign and keeping his voters, keeping his group.
Yeah, and this was, to some extent, repositioning by saying, you know, CPAC is my base now. You're my base now, and I'm your leader now, right? And this is him saying, I know I wasn't here last year. I thought I'd be too controversial. All that stuff that seemed too controversial, that's happening now. I'm doing that now. There was also one sort of mostly unspoken undercurrent in the room, and that's that of the Supreme Court nominee. For all those conservatives who have questions about some of these other things, that is going to go a long way. He gets a ton of ongoing mileage out of that.
But remember CPAC a year ago, or remember CPAC even 2 years ago when Donald Trump was beginning to move around and run for president. A lot of the conversation there was that he's a cancer on conservatism, that there were the seeds of the Never Trump movement. This is his movement now.
Well, winning solves a lot of those problems, and everybody wants to be with a winner. But it is interesting how there is a realignment in the Republican Party, and it's one that everyone should be paying attention to. I thought one of the more interesting things he said is the Republican Party is now going to be the party of the American worker. I mean, that he has made a lot of moves in these last few weeks to solidify that portion of the base. That is a reach out to, he did well with those, with average American workers or people who had lost jobs, but I think that is kind of a olive branch out.
Yeah, a Republican president standing at the Conservative Political Action Conference praising Bernie Sanders, saying he was right on trade, and saying my doors are open to everyone if they're talking about creating American jobs, including labor unions. You had a Republican president standing there making that message. It's a key point. A populist message, and we'll get to Steve Bannon a bit later in the program, but a very nationalist message. The Republican Party has been, in the last 20 years or so, the party of free trade, the party of globalism, the party of an integrated global economy. Listen to the president.
Global cooperation, dealing with other countries, getting along with other countries is good. It's very important. But there is no such thing as a global anthem, a global currency, or a global flag. This is the United States of America that I'm representing. I'm not representing the globe. I'm representing your country.
But it's all well and good to say that, but it's not like places like China are just going to sit back and say, oh, well, they're just taking a break. They're going to go in. They're going to kind of go into where the United States pulls back. There are other entities here that are more than happy to fill the void if the United States decides to go to seal off the borders. And I'm not talking about immigration.
I dare say that's not the speech that Rex Tillerson or General Mattis would have given.
Well, except that this nationalism, oddly enough, is kind of a global movement. You're seeing it crop up in different countries, and it's the most undercovered issue of the day.
It's the biggest. It is now the bubbling has turned into boiling, and it's a reaction to globalism. It's a reaction to global trade. People think they're getting screwed, to use a polite word, and it's a reaction to the refugee, the moving around, and diversity in many countries.
And what's going to be so interesting next week when he addresses a joint meeting of Congress. Does Donald Trump stick to these nationalistic themes? Does he stick to what he said to CPAC? Does it sound like the speech we just heard? Or does he deviate in any way, knowing that his own party does not go along with some of these issues? Like NAFTA is hugely supported among Republicans in Congress. Does he come in and say this is one of the worst trade deals ever, a disaster, like he said today, or does he deviate from that language in any way? It'll be fascinating to see.
What we saw today was a bit of what we saw in the campaign when they were trying to keep him on the teleprompter. It was really 2 speeches or 3 speeches. He gave the speech that was in the teleprompter, but he also, whenever he heard applause or whenever he decided, when he feels the speech on the prompter leaving the crowd flat, he goes off and he tells little diversions and antics. He goes, let's listen to some more. His language, again, his language, this is one of the reasons he got elected. He speaks differently. He does not speak like a traditional politician. And we know one of his complaints during the Obama years was the president wouldn't use the term radical Islam. This president doesn't shy away.
So let me state this as clearly as I can. We are going to keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country. We will not be deterred from this course. And in a matter of days, we will be taking brand new action to protect our people and keep America safe. You will see the action.
This is one of the many Trump paradoxes, if you will. The career people at Foggy Bottom or the Pentagon going when he says things like that. Trump supporters are saying, "Thank you, Mr. President." That's the way we want to hear it.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Look, the foreign policy situation that's taking shape right now, whether it's on the approach to ISIS or whether it's on the approach to NATO relations or whether there's going to be a border tax or whatever, what he says publicly in tweets and in speeches like this is really different than the sort of gradual policy shifts and feelers that his representatives are trying to lay out. And there's been a lot of mixed messaging. Some have asked whether it's a cleanup act. But what the president has found out of speaking off the cuff rather than explicitly or cautiously is that it creates sort of a space for him to find a middle ground. And while diplomats and foreign governments and stuff are like worried about it, they all also know that it kind of doesn't necessarily mean what he says. He's actually found some space in what President Obama might have considered reckless.
It's an interesting point, because people said the same things about Ronald Reagan to a degree, that Ronald Reagan would have these bold ambitions. We're going to balance the budget. We're going to shrink government. Well, that didn't happen. But the wall fell down. The Cold War ended. And so to the point, you two had, you were saying, can he get these things done, or will China step into these voids if he creates them? The president gives what sounds like a very clear America first, pulling back message. But if he points to that as a North Star, and then the truth is actually somewhere in the middle, that the United States doesn't fully retreat, it just tries to rearrange some of these relationships, is he fine with his base? Is that good enough?
I think that it's also just a change of direction. Right. There is a big problem with his imprecision, and it's very frustrating for a lot of people. But he's clearly making a change in direction in U.S. policy, and he does allow his cabinet to then worry about the details. And it's a challenge for reporters to understand that there is a big difference between what he says and what his administration is actually doing.
I found that remarkable. I've covered CPAC for many, many years, and that's a new movement. It's interesting to see how he manages this going forward. But remember, even after he was elected, there was talk of a Ted Cruz challenge in 2020, a John Kasich challenge in 2020. I don't think anybody hears that anymore at the moment.
Yeah, no.
This is his party.
This is his party. I mean, remember last year, he was third place in that straw poll at CPAC. He only got, I think, 15%. He was behind Marco Rubio, who's number 2. Ted Cruz won that. It just shows the dramatic shift, folks coming to his side, and he knows that. That's powerful. That's the power of his presidency right now.
It is true he's doing things that please conservatives. I mean, nominating Gorsuch, his return to federalism on the bathroom issue. He's doing things that please people, and it's not just that he's changing them. He is governing as a conservative.
Let's not forget Mike Pence. Mike Pence is a very key part of that group, of pleasing that group. You saw Mike Pence's speech last night was also very well received. He remains extremely popular, and I think he's one of the people that gave Trump a lot of credibility on the onset with the CPAC.
To your point, can you keep tax cuts, a stronger military, less regulation, traditional Republican principles, add in some of this worker stuff and globalism, anti-globalism stuff? We'll see. That's the great challenge as we go forward. Just ahead, everyone, does President Trump's promise to obliterate ISIS mean sending U.S. troops back to Iraq and possibly even Syria?